I wrote two of the essays that I wrote for educating architects, and I'm going to do something that I don't normally do, which is actually read the text. So I'm sorry if my kind of estuary accent starts kind of going lower and lower. But rather than do my normal kind of ad-lib, which means I can never stick to any kind of time schedule, I'm actually going to read. This presentation is based on two of the essays that I wrote for educating architects. On one point, I want to make clear, I don't really differentiate between different disciplines of urban design, landscape architecture, landscape urbanism, architecture, interior design. I believe that they are all a subset of the same discipline. Let the architect be educated, skillful with the pencil, instructed in geometry, know much history, have followed the philosophers with attention, understand music, have some knowledge of medicine, know the opinions of the jurists, and be acquainted with astronomy and the theory of the heavens. Marcus Vitruvio Poe, the 10 books of architecture. Vitruvius's temples and architecture, that were thought to be written around 15 BC, give the earliest comprehensive account of the role of architecture designer and the nature of architectural design practice. In his discussion on the education of an architect, Vitruvius states that the architect needs to have a wide body of learning, but obviously they cannot be experts in all matters. However, he also says that it is not necessary, since any activity is split into two parts, the activity and the theory of it. While specialist knowledge is essential to engage with the activity itself, the theory of an activity often shares similarities and common points of departure with the theories of other activities. So an expert in one can readily understand the workings of many others. Architectural education still requires the understanding of a wide range of knowledge and expertise. And while the list of today's skill set has some obvious differences to that of Vitruvius, there are equally notable constants. The ability to communicate through representation, an understanding of form and aesthetics, knowledge of history and theory, and knowledge of the law and economics. Architectural design has, since Vitruvius anyway, encompassed many other disciplines. But what is equally true today is that many other disciplines encompass architectural ideas, skills and practices. The spatial and notational skills of architecture particularly can be found in aspects of a wide variety of activities: film and television, computer games, virtual and augmented reality, and web and multimedia design. Architecture is also embedded in much installation and land art, as well as performance and interactive media arts. These practices require an ability to generate, develop and represent and execute spatial and temporal ideas, skills that have been at the core of architecture since its inception. The practices of art design are converging, and the point at which they seem to be coalescing is in architecture. One of the ways in which design practices are coming together is through the digital design tools that are now ubiquitous across all design disciplines. While traditional orthographic forms of representation have been used in design and production environments in ways similar to architecture, digital design and manufacture create huge overlaps in the skill bases of a wide range of outcomes. The 3D software that an architect might use to develop or visualize a project is the same software used by a filmmaker to create an animation, or a games designer to create a game environment, and the same that is used by a graphic artist for web or product design. Even within more specific context of the construction industry itself, due to the rise of building information modelling, Architects, engineers, project managers and surveyors are not only working on the same project with the same software, but sharing information within the same modelling environment. Today's generation of designers are defined as much by their software skills as they are by the titles of their professions. The transfer of skills across software is a basic condition of this paradigm. Despite differences in interface and some of the logistical parameters of the various software packages, the majority of available applications are based on similar methodological epistemologies in their structures. The point about software is not that students simply engage with digital software to represent their projects, but that they understand software as part of a system that enables them to develop a set of skills that are transferable across a wide range of disciplines, utilising their spatial skills to maximum effect. And because spatial design education is still quite unique in the diversity of knowledge that students are expected to acquire, they are perhaps better placed than students in other design practices. Students in schools of architecture should be encouraged to be just as familiar with film editing and post-production software, game software, scripting and computational coding and programming as they are with CAD software and BIM. And what is important in encouraging the learning of software skills, and I resist the use of the word teaching, is to create an environment where students can play with a number of applications, preferably in small groups where they can help and encourage each other to push the tools. And even if they make mistakes, which they should, use this to begin to understand the core principles of these tools. Once these skills are developed, they can be applied over time to a wide variety of other packages and forms. I'm a great advocate of the use of small groups and the emphasis in support and collaboration within a version of the watch one, do one, teach one approach, as it's highly preferential to a more formal classroom approach, which can render highly uniform and stereotypical outcomes. Additional support in terms of understanding the broader context of design, from manufacturing processes to historical precedents, and from legislative and legal frameworks to contextual and urban strategies, still needs to be delivered, but even much of that can be plugged into the digital design process in the form of intuitive models based on direct experience. Within the digital design environment, the two activities of doing and theorising can take place within the same system. While the skills of architecture are to be found everywhere, the role of the designer in the design profession faces greater uncertainty, particularly in the area of the built environment. Changes in the commissioning and the realisation of building projects have meant that the role of the designer as the head of the building design team is no longer standard practice. In many large projects, changes in procurement methods, particularly the use of management contracting, necessitate that project managers and surveyors are in control, and the financial and technical complexity of such endeavours mean that buildings are more likely to be valued for their investment and financial qualities than for their aesthetic and design considerations. In some cases, the design is simply the clipped-on surface to an otherwise generic product, and the architect is little more than a stylist. One of the realities of the current state of the architectural profession is that many younger design practices have had to embrace the need to branch out into other areas, thereby utilising the full breadth of their skill base that they acquired during their education to its maximum potential. Practices that augment their core business with other activities, furniture and product design, engaging in renderings or animation work, working as art directors or set designing environments for video games, websites or graphics, exhibition and interactive media are now very common. Multi and interdisciplinary ways of working are providing creative opportunities to question the traditional model of what an architecture student does when they leave college, and opens up areas for an integrated spatial design where the boundaries between disciplinary boundaries is actively blurred. Even the idea that the architect is the lead professional in the actual designing of building is becoming an anachronism. The need for architects to understand how to operate in broader and more collective ways with the ability to work and support others needs to be emphasised, and that needs to start in their education. Architectural education needs to embrace these wider possibilities without watering down its core activities for those who wish to follow more specific professional pathways. But even the traditional model of an architect can range from working on your own at home to someone working in a global office as part of a huge team with a wide set of possible skills that has to be catered for. One of the most important aspects of contemporary architectural practice is the maximisation of the way in which work and ideas are disseminated through online media, thus providing a public forum that links academia and the profession to those from other disciplines and beyond. From the start of their education, students should be encouraged to post and share their work. The main benefits of this is that they begin to feel that their work is part of a dialogue within a wider design community and can start to operate in collective, collaborative and supportive ways that will become essential as they move from being students to design practitioners. It's no coincidence that these considerations are the basic principles behind various open source approaches that will become increasingly significant within the design community. Whether through personal websites, video posting, blogging, social media, crowdsourcing, funding for projects, the emergence of online resources has given students opportunities to present their ways that were unimaginable only a few years ago. Students can literally be one click away from seeing their work picked up in the mainstream. In recent years, a number of students I have taught, particularly Tavares, have had their work go viral as a result of their projects being online. Tavares' master project won both the RIPA Silver Medal for Best Postgraduate Architectural Project and, at the same time, a Special Animation Award at the Sundance Film Festival. And he has recently completed the film Jonah for one of the UK's leading independent film companies, Film 4. At the same time, alongside such as Building Blog, Strange Harvest, Architecture and Other Habits, and Design cover a wide range of subjects which are useful conduits for more speculative and idiosyncratic material than the more mainstream journals that tend to be more industry focused. Spatial design is a fantastic education. It develops a rich and valuable set of skills, but perhaps one of the problems with much architectural design education is that there is too much of an emphasis on students going into the mainstream, where those skills are often unappreciated or completely wasted. The reality is that the majority of students entering architectural education will not, in the UK at least, become professional architects. However, schools of architecture should not see that as a threat, but as an opportunity to capitalise on the growing importance of architectural ideas and skills outside of traditional practice. As well as offering professional routes, schools might also consider architecture and interior architecture and landscape architecture and routes. The design professions have much to gain from the expanded sense of design education and should treasure and encourage the freedom and speculation of academia. For it is within the spaces of education that the profession can think and develop new skills and ideas. Education cannot emulate the profession, nor should it simply be beholden to it. Equally, education cannot ignore the profession. It has a duty to critically engage with the changing values, ideas and practices of the profession and set them within a context of the wider changes of society. This implies the need to develop political models to address expanding populations, ethical use of resources and the uneven distribution of wealth and materials, subjects that the profession often tries to ignore. Architectural education may have changed greatly in the last 2,000 years, but the challenge remains the same: to educate students to be able to generate, develop, represent and execute architectural ideas, some of which will be the designs of buildings, although many will not. Just as Vitruvius thought that there were three departments of architecture: the art of building, the making of timepieces, and the construction of machinery, then contemporary design should include all those disciplines where spatial design skills are clearly demonstrated. Architecture is well placed to capitalise on its rich history and claim its rightful part in the making of all future spaces, be they actual, augmented or virtual. A good school of architecture develops students that go on to become competent professionals. A great school of architecture develops students that can go on to be whatever they want to be. There's no particular correlation between the images and what I'm saying, but all the images are taken from Unit 15 students from the last 15 years. I'll talk a little bit later. You can read that way. Since 1997, I've been exploring the use of the moving image in the construction of new architectural possibilities through the work of postgraduate students as part of the design studio called Unit 15. However, Unit 15 is not a film unit. It is an architecture unit that employs the moving image to generate, develop and represent architectural and spatial projects. In my teaching, film, animation and motion graphics facilitate the creation of new modalities of architectural practice, representation and space. I actively promote a wide variety of techniques, from stock frame animation to sophisticated computer-generated imagery, and the work produced by my students demonstrates a unique approach to both content and form, and suggests a whole new series of possibilities for architectural production. The desire to incorporate the moving image comes out of two main impulses. First, as a critique of traditional orthographic projection, where the nature of space is largely implied through two-dimensional means. And secondly, to create architectures that are immersive and time-based. A third imperative that drives the utilisation of the moving image is a long-held interest in film and the belief that the moving image is the most beneficial way to communicate spatial ideas to a wider audience. Students in Unit 15 do not make films of their projects. The film is the project. However, film does not simply mean the linear narrative-based work of conventional cinema. The moving image can also be integrated into installations and performance-based work, or incorporated into computer games and augmented and virtual reality environments. There is no standard model. Students are expected to deploy the most appropriate means to most effectively describe their own ideas. The development of strategies for deploying time-based work has necessitated the generation of innovative techniques of planning and representing the projects. Students not only have to describe the spatial ambitions of their projects, but also the temporal elements that they are utilising. In pursuit of this, they are encouraged to produce hybrid drawing techniques that mix architectural and filmic modes of representation as a way of mapping out their projects. These chronograms have a tripartite function: to develop the narrative, to explain the techniques and methods of construction of the project, and to communicate the stylistic and aesthetic concerns. And obviously, in a context such as this, they also work as standing in for the film itself. The methodology of developing movie-based projects offers students an important insight into the development of complex design projects, where the decisions made at the start carry with them implications as the whole progresses. With the moving image, unlike more traditional graphic means, students are compelled to try and make the project work with the material to hand, rather than simply starting again. The skills they develop in the production of their work are both much sought after in architectural practice and transferable across other disciplines, such as film and television, graphics and web design, and as well as working in visualisation. Central to Unit 15's approach is that students are required to engage with a speculative idea of architecture, what architecture in the future might be, through exploration of a wide variety of technologies from augmented and virtual reality, nanotechnology, synthetic biology, genetic manipulation, robotics and artificial intelligence. Their projects operate on the cusp of technological innovation, and many include what the critic Darko Sudri would describe as a nova, a strange newness, where one aspect of the project is created from outside the author's existing scientific paradigm. The overlap between architecture and aspects of science fiction is deliberate and central to the unit's ethos, where architecture as science fiction is a key concept. The unit draws on a wide range of critical inspirations. Project themes have emanated from novelists such as J.G. Ballard, David Foster Wallace and Ian M. Banks, from theorists Deleuze and Guattari, Henri Lefebvre, Paul Virilio, Mike Davis, Manuel de Landa, Constant Neumann, and the films of David Lynch, Michel Gondry, Darren Aronofsky, David Fincher, Werner Herzog, Shane Carruth and Wim Wenders. However, perhaps the most single important theorist to influence the ideas of Unit 15 has been the work of Frederick Jameson. His postmodernism, the cultural logic of late capitalism, has been an important text throughout the unit's history, and archaeologies of the future, the design of utopia and other science fictions has become increasingly so as we have actively embraced utopian concepts through the lens of science fiction. The dissemination of student work is a vital component of my teaching practice. All Unit 15 students are expected to use blogs as a way of documenting the development of their projects and as a means of making their work public. The unit has also produced a number of its own publications, and its work has been published internationally. I also regularly curate exhibitions and organise film screenings of student work. The public dimension of the unit is unique and internationally acclaimed. The films of Unit 15 students have won numerous awards and been shown at international film festivals and exhibitions throughout the world. And students have been featured at London Zero, Alphaville and the London Design Festival. In 2008, Unit 15 was also the subject of a special screening at the Bartlett cinema. Since moving to Greenwich, Unit 15 has added further depth to its teaching and theoretical base. With the inclusion of former student Mike Aling, and with the help of long-term collaborator Simon Withers as additional teaching partners, and now also with the help of Jim Park, who's here to do his PhD, without whom none of the Educating Architects exhibition would have taken place. So thanks, Hugh.
Thank you.
The Greenwich iteration is also developing the polemical aspects of Unit 15 through Unit 15 research, a practice-based research group that integrates theoretical, speculative and live projects, moving the focus of the unit beyond the confines of academia and seeking to implement some of its ideas through a strategic deployment of new technology. Now, what I'll be doing later on this afternoon is showing you some of the Unit 15 films. This year I was invited to Cornell by Mark Morris to do an exhibition of Unit 15 work, and because it was the 15th anniversary from when I first started using film and animation, we called it 15 by 15. And what it did was it used 10 screens throughout the kind of Cornell architecture campus, and on each screen we had 10 films. So there were 100 films showing continuously throughout the day. The hardest thing was actually editing that list down to 100 because of the kind of number of things I had to leave out. It was actually quite difficult. This afternoon, because I've got 30 minutes, I thought I'd do a version of 15 by 15 where I've taken 2 minutes of some of my favourite, but also perhaps some of the most influential of the Unit 15 films from the last 15 years. So I will be doing that after Mike and Mark Megagrams. And with that, I'm going to finish.